Afternoon, everyone. How is everyone on this beautiful, beautiful day? You've been so lucky. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of LaunchBox ladies to our event today. It's going to prove, I think, to be extremely interesting and also helpful. My name is Catherine Bailey. I am the chair of LaunchBox Ladies, and happy to see you all here. Make sure that you signed in, got your ticket for the raffle, and your lunch, and sit back, enjoy, and have a great time with us today. Cindy? Yep. Cindy will be here, right? Cindy is our director of LaunchBox. And right now she's very busy making sure that all of our guests are comfortable. But here she is. All right, thank you, Catherine.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today at the November LaunchBox Ladies Speaker Series event. Yes. At Lehigh Valley LaunchBox, our mission is to provide the resources, support, that entrepreneurs need to turn their visions into thriving businesses. For those of you who are new to our community, I want to highlight some of the key ways Lehigh Valley LaunchBox supports our entrepreneurs. Through coaching and mentorship, we connect founders with experienced mentors who can guide them through the challenges of launching a small business or scaling their business. Through our workshops and boot camps, we offer a variety of programming focused on the critical skills like pitching, customer discovery, business model canvas development, AI, and today's topic, imposter syndrome. Through networking events, we host numerous opportunities for you to meet other entrepreneurs, industry experts, and potential partners. Lehigh Valley LaunchBox is not just a space, it's a growing ecosystem designed to empower innovators and build a thriving, inclusive entrepreneurial community. As we focus on inclusivity, we are particularly committed to helping underrepresented entrepreneurs in our region gain access to the opportunities they need to succeed. Our offices are located on this beautiful PSU LB campus. This campus has a cafe and a Starbucks, so feel free to stop by and continue networking after the event. Of special interest, this evening, our art gallery will reopen for your cultural engagement. And our library on the second floor has an entire section dedicated specifically to entrepreneurs. So feel free to stop by and borrow any of our books. We appreciate your attendance and support. Should you feel the need to financially support today's event or any of our programming, please feel free to click on the QR codes located on your table. In addition, I'm happy to talk to you directly about sponsorship opportunities. Remember, Tuesday, December 3rd is Giving Tuesday. Donation links can be found in our social media and also on our website. Those of you who are utilizing sodas, there are tabs on your soda cans. We are doing a donation to the Ronald McDonald House, so there is a receptacle for those tabs. Please feel free to use that. Now, I'd like to call up Anna Weinberg, current PSU Lehigh Valley student, president of the Student Her Empowered, and one of this past summer's Teen Entrepreneurship Challenge Residence Assistants. She's going to introduce our speaker for us. Anna, come on up.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Crystal Agee. The Burnout MD for Entrepreneurs is a physician turned multi-certified coach and consultant. She is also the founder and the CEO of the Missing Piece Coach, a coaching company focused on helping entrepreneurs navigate life and business without burning out or compromising their health. Her work is grounded in getting to the root cause of overwhelm, stress, and burnout. She teaches entrepreneurs to create holistic success while ensuring they take care of their business's most important asset, the human behind the business. Ultimately, her mission is to help entrepreneurs build their legacy without shortening their lifespan. So without further ado, Dr. Crystal Agee.
Hi, everyone. Hello. Thank you. Okay. So my nervous system needs me to feel. No. Yes, you can. Okay, great. So today we're going to be talking about debunking imposter syndrome. This is the last take on my goal for you today is this is the last take of imposter syndrome that you'll need. Let's start with a show of hands. Who here has ever felt self-doubt? Oh, really fast. Thank you for your honesty and transparency. Who here has ever thought I have imposter syndrome? That's many, thank you. Who here has ever questioned if they had imposter syndrome? Okay, thank you. Thank you for your transparency. Before we get too further, the name is Dr. Ajay, but it's okay. I'm a pediatric critical care, I was trained pediatric critical care physician, taking care of really, really sick 5-day-olds to 18-year-olds requiring a lot of medication, interventions, machines to help their body survive. Sometimes they didn't, and I was a person that had to tell that mom or dad, her caregiver, that their child was not going home with them. I was great at my job, but it was not my purpose. And so short of the long, I decided to launch the Missing Piece Coach in 2020. Like Anna mentioned, helping entrepreneurs create holistic success beyond the bottom line. As one does when someone does a career shift, they dive deep into the new world. And so I just want to highlight certain certifications that I got that helped me create this body of work around imposter syndrome. Professional life, equity-centered leadership, advanced feminism, and imposter syndrome. So that's who you're hearing. This is a little about me. Who's speaking to you right now. What's in it for you? And sorry, you can't really see thing, but what's in it for you is we're going to talk about what is imposter syndrome, what it's not, how did we get here, what to do about it, and then hopefully we have time for Q&A. I'm sure we will. So thank you very much. History of so what is imposter syndrome? So the definition of imposter syndrome is the belief that one is not as smart as people think they are. Someone that cannot internalize their success, so their accomplishments are just by luck. They can't understand that they are deserving of the success that they have accomplished. And so they have a true fear exposure that they're going to be found out that they're have succeeded. It was originally termed imposter phenomenon in 1978, and as time went on, mainstream media turned it into imposter syndrome, and that's what we have today. It was first termed by two white female psychologists, Suzanne Imes and Pauline Lance. And it was first thought to think that it only affected more women than men, but over time we realized that it affects both genders, just women are more vocal about it. And what it's not an official diagnosis, so although it has a terminology syndrome, there is no medical diagnosis associated with it, it's a fixed syndrome with no cure. These are the types of imposter syndrome. You might have seen this. There's 5 different types, and their overall theme, the overall theme is that the outcome is associated with their worth. So a perfectionist sets really high, unrealistic goals. They get stuck in analysis paralysis. Their worth is tied to the perfect outcome. A superhuman, multitasking, feels the need to do more than others. Very resistant to asking for help. Expert wants to be an expert on every subject. It's very resistant to saying, I don't know, because if they don't know, they're unworthy. Natural genius believes they should do everything quickly and well. If they struggle, if they have a failure, they're a fraud, they're an imposter. It's tied to their work as well. And a soloist thinks asking for help is a sign of weakness. Now, oftentimes, someone who has imposter syndrome probably has a little bit of all of them. Can anyone relate to any of this? Show of hands. I'm hearing some chuckles. Okay. Here are also here are the signs of imposter. This is how it could maybe show up for you. You believe that people knew how hard you work, they won't think you're that special. You avoid asking for a promotion because you don't believe you're capable enough or deserving, despite what your resume says. You often find yourself researching or completing another degree or certification to help you feel official. If you ask for more time or help, they will think you're not smart enough. Handle it. Do extra work or over-prepare to ensure your worthiness. You believe your superpower is juggling multiple things at the same time, never needing to ask for help. I joke that sometimes this looks like trying to grab all your grocery bags at the same time, like you won't go back to the car. You have to bring all the grocery bags with you. It's a mission. You become anxious to do a presentation because you fear people will finally realize you don't know what you're talking about. You also resist making friends in the workplace or among your peers because if they get to know you, they'll figure you out. You have a lot of ideas on how to do things differently, but never share them out loud in fear of potential consequences. What imposter syndrome is not. Imposter syndrome does not equal self-doubt. Imposter syndrome does not equal anxiety, it does not equal fear. It's also not lying. So something I don't say is you're either short on what you're selling or you're selling yourself short. And if you're short on what you're selling, that's not imposter syndrome. So if you're overselling what you have or over promising something that you know you can't deliver on, and that's not imposter syndrome, that's just big selling. The thing with self-doubt and anxiety and fear, it often gets conflated because as we continue to learn about the human experience, we often find ourselves as talking heads and not connected to our body. So when we enter entrepreneurship, we have a lot of these emotions and sensations and trying to figure out what's happening. And so we want to tie it to a storyline that makes sense. And because imposter syndrome has had this overarching narrative about just feeling some weird way when you do something new, you have to learn how to separate that. These are a list of names that have, they have shared that they suffer from imposter syndrome. So there's no one immune, no level of status or success that leaves you immune to this phenomenon. Some of the names here: Albert Einstein, Michelle Obama, Emma Watson, Serena Williams, Tom Hanks, and Maya Angelou. Anyone surprised by these names? Yeah. Which ones stick out to you? But we start taking a closer look into this phenomenon, as researchers find that people who suffer from imposter syndrome have a dysfunctional relationship with competence. And the official definition of competence, the ability to complete something successfully and effectively. And an amazing example of this is Sarah Breedlove, most famously known for Madam C.G. Walker, the first self-made female millionaire in the United States. She created hair products for Black women. So imagine in the late 1800s, early 1900s, selling this product. You can assume that she had multiple failures, but she still figured herself out. Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, she got multiple no's, but she still continued to figure it out. That she got no's from like the original hosiery companies that were led by men. They thought her idea didn't make sense. And so these two women had a healthy relationship to failure, a healthy relationship with their competence. But I also want to set the scene for 1978. Sorry, the PowerPoint's a little off. Setting the scene for 1978, again, 1978 is when imposter phenomenon was first termed. So 10 years prior is when the civil rights movement ended. 4 years prior is when women could get mortgages more easily. Just 3 years prior, the phrase sexual harassment was first coined. And so then we come to 1978, imposter phenomenon entered the chat. Then in 1988, 10 years later is when women business owners no longer needed a male signature for a bank loan. 10 years later after this phenomenon was coined. Then in 1989, intersectionality was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, a professor of law, which, if you're not familiar with intersectionality, it explains how different identities can lead to unique combinations of discriminations and privilege. Then in 2019, the Crown Act was introduced in 20 states, introduced and now adopted by 20 states as of 2024. So only 20 states have adopted the Crown Act, which is essentially prohibits discrimination on Black folks being able to wear their natural hair at work. So that's the setting of where, we're at now. And so I want to elicit a point with this timeline, not to just give you a history lesson, is that imposter syndrome points to the person as the problem rather than the ideologies that have incited it. And so we're going to take a little bit look into the different ideologies, the dominant narratives that have led to people believing that they have imposter syndrome. So the concept of professionalism. When we think of, you have to be professional, what are we thinking of? We've been taught that a professional job like doctor, lawyer is better than a trade job. We've been taught specific beauty standards that we need to counter our nose to for whatever reason, to match Eurocentric standards. That we have to win at all costs, which then normalizes success is only at the top because we have embraced a hyper-individualistic way of succeeding, and so we leave our community behind. That has been normalized. That if you're not ambitious, you're complacent. That it's not okay to show emotion, that emotions equal weakness. That we have to stay future-oriented, goal-focused. That burnout is normal, it's part of the journey. That authority is revenue-based. And that full-time is a 40-hour work week. That's also a dominant narrative. And then regarding women, that women are bad with money. Women are taught to save rather than invest, versus men are taught to invest rather than save. That we're shopaholics. That that's just how we are. Our free labor is normalized. We're usually the party planner. We're usually the volunteer. Just women love to do that stuff. That we should be grateful for the opportunities, that we shouldn't question or ask for more. That we need makeup to look professional. That we need to be humble, nice, quiet. Don't be too much. This is another layer for particularly women of color. Don't be too much. That we're usually a follower, we're not a leader. And that really the purpose for women is to bear children and stay at home. And the prime time example of a supermom, juggling multiple roles to keep up. Full-time job, primary caregiver, the baker, PTA, gotta stay fit, gotta stay social, do the party planning, right? And she believes she's an imposter because she can't keep up to all these standards that I've set before, but the game was rigged against her because the 40-hour work week was created with the man having a wife at home taking care of the kids. The concept was not created with women in mind. The concept was created for men, that they go to work and everything else is taken care of for the woman. So when women started entering the chat, entering the workforce, they were playing in a game that was rigged against themselves. And so she's thinking she's an imposter, but it's the ideology that inside it is the issue of all the roles that she has to fulfill. Anyone here not fit into some of the dominant narratives that I shared? Oh, so we all fit into the dominant narrative. Oh, great. No, all jokes aside, but also the dominant narrative doesn't mean it's not bad or good. It's just a matter of how it serves you and does it cause negative consequences in your life. So I'll give you an example. Once upon a time, there was a med student who was in that first day of the ICU. And so as she's preparing, she got there early. She's looking over her notes, looking over the labs, making sure she's ready for rounds. And rounds is when the huddle of white coats are going from room to room, presenting on the patient and then getting drilled on questions by the attendant. And so there was a group of med students, about 5 or 7, and they're waiting for the attending to go. And a white male student walks up to her and goes, "Oh, wow, a Spanish doctor. I've never seen one of those before. I didn't know those existed." Verbatim. He was in genuine shock in front of this med student. And so that med student had to keep her cool because she was about to present to the attending, and the rounds are very important. It's where you make the impression, where you get the letter of recommendation. So you have to keep yourself together. And the kicker was the attending that they were waiting for was a Spanish doctor. And so the med student was me. And so I till this day regret not saying something smart or like sarcastic or like a punch in the gut, because I was just so flabbergasted that he had the audacity to walk up and think that that was okay to say. And so that's a dominant narrative for many folks, is that one, doctors are male, and two, they're usually of a different race, right? And so what I want to offer and invite you to consider is that imposter syndrome is based under false truths. We're operating under false dominant narratives. These dominant narratives are imposed onto people or society as a universal truth. That's just, it is what it is. That's how the world operates. And anyone who steps out of that narrative is presumed wrong or defective. And part of the human condition is wanting to survive, is wanting to be part of with other humans to survive in the group. So that translates into people assimilating to a dominant narrative, to be similar to the dominant narrative. Resulting in many folks believing they are the imposter because they're trying to fit in, they're just trying to survive. So people default to assuming they're the problem, the imposter, ignore their authenticity, refuse to embrace who they are and what they can uniquely contribute to a conversation or to community. So I want to stop normalizing imposter syndrome. Now, I don't want to say I don't want to normalize the experience you may be having, but replacing the terminology of imposter syndrome cuts the conversation too short because you're not diving into the storyline of what's actually happening. So now what? I want you to be able to choose a narrative, choose the truth that you want to follow. You choose your narrative, you change your life. As entrepreneurs, we know mindset is everything. Mindset dictates how we see the world. And we need to understand what truths we're following that dictates that shapes that. So my reframe, my invitation is that it's not imposter syndrome, it's a personality gap. I have to say imposter syndrome is just a sexy way to say internalized oppression. There's a version of you that believes you want to be, that you see, you desire yourself to be, you want to show up one way, but another version of you shows up. The difference between the two is a gap. That gap, your inside does not yet match your outside, just not yet. And so we're going to talk about mapping your gap, your reference point, training your nervous system, the art form of critical thinking, and restoration protocol to help you close this gap. So first up is map your gap. So really simply, identify your starting point. Think of a time when you felt like you had imposter syndrome and connect with how that felt. And how would you have wanted to feel instead? That's your goal point. One of the questions here is, what is the future me thinking and feeling and doing? So at your goal point, what are you thinking there? What do you think about yourself? What are you doing? How are you feeling? In between here and there, what's the next best step towards that? Last night I figured out you can do this drawing on Canva, so I wanted to insert this. These are my little people. So the one on the left is your starting point, and the one on the right is your goal point. So if you're thinking I'm a fraud, it's a far leap to thinking I'm amazing. You're feeling, I'm gonna just take a leap as you're feeling, you may be feeling insecure when you're thinking I'm a fraud. And eventually you want to feel secure. You may be hiding when you feel insecure and you're thinking I'm a fraud, and you just want to learn how to be yourself. That space in between those two, it's not an automatic switch, right? But the space in between is the gap. And so this TFA is your thoughts create your feelings drive your actions create your results. And so that's why mindset is so important, because it can dictate and influence how you're feeling in a moment. And so we want to learn how to connect and be aware of what our experience is now, so we can learn how to identify it where we want to go. Here's my personal example, a little off. I used to believe I suck at public speaking. My first medical school presentation, literally, I could not stop my leg from shaking. And from that point on, I said, I'm going to avoid public speaking at all costs. But then fast forward a couple of years, I thought public speaking is an important skill, especially as an entrepreneur. So then I thought, I need to improve my public speaking skills. And this time frame between I suck at public speaking and I need to improve my public speaking skills is about a year, right? Or so. Then I learned that public speaking can't and won't kill me. Then I learned improving public speaking is possible. Right now I'm getting better at public speaking. I'm looking towards, I want public speaking to come natural to me. And after that, I want to master public speaking. So I'm identifying my starting point and my goal point and understanding that it's just a gap that I need to close. It's not that public speaking will be completely off towards me, is that there's a gap, there's an opportunity to close. Everything is a journey. Becoming your point of reference. So part of the issue around imposter syndrome is that we have this external point of reference. Even the definition of high achiever is dependent on something externally to you. But really, at the end of the day, no one is going to save you. There will be no room ready for you to decide, oh, I don't feel like an imposter syndrome. It will follow you if you let it. And so one of the ways to help you become your own point of reference, so you're not dependent on society or influence of dominant narratives, is to set your core values. Your core values are your compass. So for me personally, one of my core values is stewardship. Stewardship in my life, in my family, in my community. And so I know that things that, in order to deliver my message and to be in integrity with my value, that I need to pursue public speaking, even if it makes me feel uncomfortable, because I am my own point of reference, my values, my company. solidifying your self-concept. When your brain wants to ask you, who do you think you are? You answer it. That's not an insulting question, you just answer it. I am XYZ. I'm a badass. I'm the total package. I'm someone who is learning. I am worthy. Whatever you need to tell yourself to solidify your self-concept and stop tying your worth to an outcome. So when your brain wants to ask you, who do you think you are, you answer it. That's not a question you ignore. And understand that self-awareness is not a destination. There's no timer. Like, I am fully aware of myself. You are constantly learning about who you are, especially in entrepreneurship. There was always another level, whether you like it or not. And so just be in relationship with self-awareness. There's nothing, there's no destination, quite literally. There's always another thing to learn. Training your nervous system. So mindset, yes, thinking is in the brain, but believing requires the body. So whenever, especially with someone who believes they have imposter syndrome, they're waiting to feel belonging, and that's dependent on someone who's creating it for them. But you have to learn how to create belonging in yourself first. If you wait to feel belonging, to feel like you belong in a room or a conversation, you're going to be waiting for a very, very long time. Learn how to create belonging in yourself first. This also ties to what a lot of people say, oh, this is a safe space. It's a safe space. But really, how we define safety depends on each person. You can have 10 different versions of safety. So it's very assumptuous to think that you can define what safety means to a person that you don't know. So really, you should be saving brave space. That's just a side note. But learn how to create belonging in yourself first. Like I said, prioritize mindset to your thoughts, create your feelings. Your feelings drive your behaviors, your actions, and those create your results. So we want to be very conscious of what we're thinking and how we're thinking. Progress moves at the speed of self-trust. So the pace at which you can move in entrepreneurship is correlated to your self-trust. And how you build self-trust is through belonging, is through being connected to your emotions, is your mindset. And that ties into how you're able to compound success, like how we talked about the definition of imposter syndrome. We can't internalize the success. You have to learn how to pick up on small and big ones. So for example, for the people who registered for today, but was like, oh, I don't feel like coming. I changed my mind. You still came anyway. That's a success. Or you're going live on social media, even if no one showed up, that's a success. So learning how to pick up on those small successes, even if it's not tied to revenue or someone saying good job, you learn how to create those moments of success for yourself, because that's solidifying your self-concept. This will also help you make stronger decisions. So one of the key skills in entrepreneurship is to learn how to make decisions and keep it moving, right? The faster you make decisions, the faster you fail, the more you will succeed. And so that pace at which we do that is directly correlated to your self-trust. So progress moves at the speed of self-trust. A bonus way to help you be in relationship with this is to plan a fail on purpose, fail forward. Redefine your relationship to failure. So I had a goal of getting 100 no's to a consult. I went to one of those fairs with multiple vendor tables. I had nothing on my table. I had a whiteboard and an easel. And I said, I think I changed it 3 times. So it basically said, got goals, ask me a question, or I think one of them was like, I need 100 no's, something like that. I don't even remember. But the goal essentially was to get 100 no's to a consult. So not only did I have to force myself to talk to people, I really wanted to get a consult. Like, it's not like I actually genuinely wanted to get a no, I wanted to get a yes. But so if I got a yes, I had to keep it moving to get 100 no's. That was 4 to 6 hours of pure failure, right? Because I didn't even get the 100 no's. So I was feeling some type of way about that. But to redefine our relationship to failure and to get used to hearing no is one of the key ingredients in entrepreneurship, because then that ties back to strengthening your relationship to competence. So always trying to figure it out. You're not going to be able to think your way out of imposter syndrome. You're going to have to match it to certain actions to show your body that you believe that you can do this, that you can change your relationship to failure, that you can close the gap of where you are to where you want to be. That's how we do this. This is maybe the most important slide. That's how you do that. Because our body remembers fear, our body remembers anxiety, our body does not want us to be uncomfortable. Our brain's main focus is to keep us safe, is to make things pleasurable and fast. And so whenever we step out of our comfort zone, that it is interpreted as, no, that's danger. Let's stay over here. So learning how to be in touch with what's happening and question, learning how to ask questions and separate fact from fiction is going to be very important, is to be open to seeing multiple things from multiple angles. And what I'm describing here is neuroplasticity. It's not just about, this is not just surface level personal development. This is the act of the ability of your nervous system to change its response to stimuli, to rewire and function in a different capacity. This is the act of training your nervous system to behave in a different way than you are used to. There's a science to this. This is what's going to help you do that. Evaluate, evaluate, evaluate. So that 100 no fail plan, your brain always wants to jump to what didn't work. I had to make sure I listed what worked. Spend time here whenever you do evaluation, when any goal, any situation, you're asking yourself what worked, what went well. Then you move on to what didn't work, and making sure that what worked and what went well, you use that to help you compound your success. Your body needs, you need to remind your brain of how and where you succeeded, because it's going to want to forget, because it's going to, the way your pathway is already trained is to go towards the negative, because it wants you to survive, it wants you to stay safe. So you need to train yourself to show your brain what worked, what went well. Then you move into what didn't work, right? And making sure we're separating fact from fiction. What actually happened? What was the circumstance? If you can prove it in the court of law, what happened? And separate it from the storyline of, oh, I'm a failure, I suck, blah, blah, blah. And then what would you do differently? If you had the opportunity again, what would you do differently? This is how we use our critical thinking to help us close the gap. And restoration protocol. So I call this the fail flu. You set aside time for recovery after big action steps, because being visible, failing on purpose, putting yourself out there, stepping out of your comfort zone, that is straining to your nervous system. Being visible when you're not used to it is straining to your nervous system. And I want to highlight that rest does not equal restoration, because restoration really is about activities that fill you back up, that remind yourself who you are. So things like laughing or venting with friends, movement, exercise is great, nature walk, or a hot cup of tea. And also making space that what goes in early goes in deep. So think about all those narratives that we have heard throughout our lives, and how we just assume that is what it is. And we begin to question, is that really true? There are people who are figuring out how to have a 20-hour work week or a 15-hour work week. There's just different things like that, questioning what is possible. And that takes time, because what goes in early goes in deep. So next time you catch yourself saying, oh, my imposter syndrome is coming up, replace it with, I'm having an internal gap. You will feel more confident, and you will have something to solve for. Also, stop looking for certifications to make you feel legit, or like you have something to prove. Research actually shows that more degrees worsen the imposter syndrome experience, not solve it. And save your time and your money. and get support and find a trusted source to help you get perspective and identify the steps that you need to close the gap. Before you leave today, identify the gap. You visualize it in your mind. Where are you? Where do you want to be? What is the next best step towards closing it? What can you think right now? Even if it's 1% less happy than what you're thinking originally, what is the next best step towards closing it? The choice is yours.
Questions? Yes, Dr. Crystal, you're okay if we ask questions?
Oh, yeah, perfect.
Rita, do you have the mic? I saw you got up.
Oh, sorry.
And remember, we do need you to talk through the microphone if you're asking your questions. We are on Zoom. I'm going to post the Zoom recording later, so I do need you to use the microphone.
Use that.
I say that as I listen. Let it form on.
Do we have some questions?
There
I was supposed to walk up here.
Oh,
We were supposed to get the mic.
No, I have to come to you. We were just like.
Okay.
Question. You mentioned it briefly. Can you elaborate a little bit on how we can change our brain or even why we say this to ourselves? It is what it is.
So like I mentioned, the brain wants to, its three jobs are to keep you safe, to make things pleasurable, and to make it fast. So sometimes it wants to think it is what it is, because then you don't have to do anything about it. You don't have to muster up the energy to overcome whatever obstacles in front of you. But the kicker is, it can take the equal amount of energy to overcome the obstacle or to make an excuse. So that's one of the reasons is like, it is what it is. Because you don't want to do the heavy mental lifting of feeling, of not only thinking about what else you can do, but also feeling the crappy emotions that come up when you step out of your comfort zone. Because it is what it is, makes you comfortable. It keeps you comfortable. But then you don't have to do anything about it. So learning how to, you can learn how to feel any feeling, you will be unstoppable. So if you learn how to process your emotions, especially in entrepreneurship, you can feel any feeling, your success is inevitable. Just a matter of time. So it is what it is, keeps you safe.
Questions? Other questions?
Okay, well, I have mine. So I'm a public relations and marketing consultant, and I always advise my clients who are generally small business owners to get as many speaking engagements as possible, even if it's just their little circle, their small networking group. Because the more they're like, oh no, I'm not a speaker like you. Well, you start somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think that bridging the gap, I think a lot of people who have imposter syndrome or can't bridge the gap think it's a leap. They don't think they're baby steps. And that's what I try to work with my clients on. It's like, no, start small, start here, start in this group. And don't think of it as people judging you or how you speak, but more think about what your expertise is and that you're sharing some information that are going to help the people you're talking to. And that's how I work with my clients to bridge the gap in public speaking.
So remind me of when I was first transitioning from my second public speaking to like, okay, I gotta figure this out. I did an IG live for 30 days. It didn't matter if no one showed up. I just went on IG live. I'm just gonna start talking. So it can be as simple as that. It's like, I'm just gonna do this and we'll see how it goes. And then that's how I figured out, oh, you can't actually die from going live. Like, so, and also I learned that how a thought error can look like, oh, no one showed up, which is not true. Like I showed up and I count. So if that's something that you need to be in a relationship with to show up for yourself, start with lives.
Jabari?
All right. Hi, I'm Javati. I do downsizing and decluttering.
So I'm going to ask the question from a different perspective because my clients often accumulate things in order to surround themselves with stuff. To talk about the imposter syndrome. So can you talk about the other side of it where you accumulate stuff so that you can look better or feel better to an external environment? So
Keeping up with the Joneses.
yeah, so can you
Yes.
talk about that perspective of it?
So what I have to say about that is going back to your core values. Is understanding what's important to yourself. And how no one actually cares how much stuff you have. And if you want to live that way, if you want to live by someone else's version of how you're supposed to live, does that feel good to you? That you always have to be dependent on what people perceive as like nice or necessary. And so connecting to your core values, it sounds simple, but it's not just empty statements on a wall. It's how do you want to live your life? And so some people take it to not the extreme, but like to a minimalistic approach because what they value is not in stuff. And you don't want to be one of those you see those TikToks where it's like an 80-year-old naming their regrets, like, I wish I did this. Like, you don't need to see another TikTok video to understand that there's maybe a different way that we should be living our lives and not based on someone's definition or layout of it. So clutter, sometimes it looks like clutter, sometimes it looks like food. Is soothing ourselves with food or soothing ourselves with stuff. It's the same way because we're trying to live a narrative that is not determined by our own.
Thank you. Other questions? How do you turn your inner voice critic into your cheerleader?
Answer that in 30 seconds.
The jump is not like that. It's starting with curiosity. I think context and curiosity, the inner critic, and understanding that sometimes this also goes into sometimes we need a coach and sometimes we need therapy. And so sometimes the inner critic is mom's voice in your head. Like it's getting the context of like why is this here? And if it doesn't have thoughts, sometimes it's just emotion. The station is like, I feel like this every time I do X, Y, Z. And so it's starting to be a relationship and question like the emotions, like, why are you here? What do you have to tell me? And getting the context, getting curious versus just thinking it's the court of law, that it's just fact. It's getting curious and start poking holes at it. And eventually, with resilience, with determination, with persistence, tenacity, keeping the focus on like, this is where I want to go. It's like, I do want to become my own leader. If you have the desire in your mind already, it's possible. It's just making the steps towards that.
Other questions? Oh,
Thank you, Rita. Hi, everybody. I'm Keith. More of a shared observation. Love everything you're talking about. I spend all my time helping entrepreneurs get out of their head and grow their business. For those of you that don't know, I know a couple familiar faces, but to answer your question, the brain does something very different. When we think about the version of ourselves that we want to become, we find a gap. But if you were to take a few moments to think about where you came from and how far you've come along, your brain works different. And so it lowers that voice and allows you to see more clearly that you're on the path. And it also allows a little bit more reflection in terms of who you are and how you feel about your path. And that lets you be more vulnerable, more open, and then subsequently, you probably have someone in your network, you didn't know all about this, to call and help, get help from.
we always find it so hard to give ourselves a pat on the back.
Yeah.
And it's so important. Any other questions?
Thanks for this discussion. It's very illuminating. I have a question on sort of a practical application, and this just happened to me a couple of days ago. I was speaking to a woman about a potential position, and it was obvious that she had made some pretty serious assumptions about me and my capabilities. What do I have you told? But it really did. I really felt that impostery feeling. And even though I feel like I could do this position and I would be good at it, I still had that strong feeling of being a fraud. Because she had made assumptions, not that I told her I could do this. Or that I had these capabilities, it's just she made assumptions, and I had that feeling in response to it. So I was wondering if you could kind of talk through the mental gymnastics of that kind of situation.
So the context needed would have to be what were the assumptions, but then my go-to question is like, are you short in what you're selling? Or are you selling yourself short? So is it that you can't picture yourself doing what she assumed, or is there, like being honest with yourself, is there a lack thereof, or is there opportunity to grow into it? Is she seeing something that you don't see for yourself? Because she has maybe more experience in the field or in a position, or that she can see what is possible based on what you presented to her. So it depends on what the assumptions are, and there's like, you see opportunity to, is there just a gap in between what's possible because of what you've just experienced, what composed as what you bring to the table? So just get the context and curiosity.
I have a question. How many of you here today are on an entrepreneurial journey? And how many of you here today work with people to help them on their entrepreneurial journey? It's a great group, great networking opportunity. There is so much available. Any other questions?
I actually did want to say one more thing, sorry. Sorry, that's for sure. You raised your hand, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I remember.
I mean, I had to
It
go.
looked into my brain, thank you. The dominant narrative around women and being humble. And that's one of the reasons of why we get accolades, or when people say stuff like, did this a lot. It's because there's literally subconscious priming to be humble, and we associate being confident and owning what we have and owning our success with being arrogant or being too much. So we want to be nice, we want to be humble, we want to be accommodating, and that's all ingrained into your nervous system. And so if you want to own who you are and be the full package energy, you're gonna have to retrain yourself and your success. Now you can go.
Stand up. Right there, you can stand up.
We all of you. Hi. I have a question for you. So, talk about imposter syndrome, because I'm even afraid to ask the question. Okay, so I have a question. So you know how, I don't know if it's everybody's story, but like you come onto the scene and you start real low. So you have a bunch of supporters, everybody's your supporter. Until you finally kind of get out of that imposter syndrome a little bit, and then you start to realize not everybody was really in your corner. So then you assess, so talk about needs, oh my God, I lost the supporters. Then you drip back into that hole, well, maybe I was never. So what do you do when you're attaching your success and everything to the people who was supposed to be your supporters? And then my secondary thing, which is Ebonics, like you lose all your homies, and then I felt like I lost my value. So now I'm like devaluing myself. So how do you channel or navigate through that?
Well, the
Boy,
first
is that
thing
your-
to that is.
Girl, you did that, you did that.
So the first thing that I want to say to that is, that's an example of an external point of reference to your worth. Is to, we value, especially for women, we value our worth tied to how helpful we be, how many friends we have, or the connections we make. So that's the first point, is like, your worth is dependent on who's supporting you. So being clear on who you are first. Then in the journey is that people decide to not come along. It's like they just decided not to come with. You didn't leave them behind. You don't have to give them any storylines, like they just didn't kind of come with. If they want to reconnect, then you can reassess. But the three key things, especially no matter what phase of entrepreneurship, is selling yourself on you, your product, and your client. So you have to love your offer first. You have to sell yourself on your offer first before you can sell it to someone else. So your offer, and your client, those are three things you have to stay in relationship with, because different circumstances, different things are gonna happen that may rock you, but that's your solidifying triangles, like those three things that would keep you moving forward.
The other question?
Any more?
Right behind you.
Thank you.
Okay, and there's one in the back too.
Sure. Yes, you should.
So when you talked about the dominant values, it reminded me of the monologue in the Barbie movie. And my question is, how do you get out of that mindset and realize that you shouldn't put yourself down to uplift others?
So in full transparency, did not watch the Barbie.
Tonight. Something to do tonight.
No, I know it's a bit, I have this thing when it has a lot of press and like everyone's gonna be like, oh, I don't know what it is, but like, I will watch it. It's just, now the hoopla has died down. Simple questions like, is it true? Is that really true? That's just one, you wanna just start poking, because I think of it as stripping, if you're used to always doing biceps in the gym, you never work out your triceps, your biceps is always gonna dominate. So whatever pathway you're used to believing is always gonna wanna domineer the conversation. So you have to, not everything that your brain says is true. Your brain thinks up to 60,000 thoughts a day. Not everything it offers is true. It's not fact. Some of the thoughts that you think are from your childhood, from your neighbor, anywhere and everywhere. So not every thought that you have is yours. And so you have the mental lift in the beginning is like, is this true? Is this something I wanna own? Is this something I wanna continue thinking? Thinking is a sentence in your brain. You can control what you think. You can redirect. Shake your head and be like, we're gonna think this. You know, one of those things like you draw. It's like etch a sketch, yeah, and then you shake and you read and you start again. It's similar concept. It's like, no, we're gonna redirect. And so a helpful point is to identify where you want to go. Like, what is it that you want? You know that this doesn't feel good. So what would you like to feel instead? And then start identify the goal point and just start questioning where you are.
Creatively.
For this session, because it was really, really informative. And I agree with the young lady with the white sweatshirt. I'm a very passionate person in everything I do. And I agree with you about stewardship. I'm all about stewardship, no matter what I do. I do realize that the power of the tongue, the mouth, is really powerful. I'm such a passionate person, I show it to everyone. And one man said to me, and he was a boss. This is what made me become an entrepreneur. He said to me, you know, you're too passionate. Do you know that affected me mentally? It took me 2 years to forget what he said and got me into entrepreneurship because I said, there's no way I'm gonna work for a man like that or anyone like that, right? So my question to you is, my goal is to become a TED Talk. That's what I want to do. So my question to you is, those emotions, it's like, how am I gonna do that? You know, what's the first step? Like, I have no clue. Like, and then you're right, it's, what am I gonna talk about? I'm all about women empowerment, right? Step into what God created you to be. Don't play small, play big, right? So how do I get out of that emotional, like, can I really do a TED Talk? Because it floats in there and I'm like, yeah, I think that's such a big stage for me. And by the way, I do speak throughout Lehigh Valley. And it's just, I do a lot of speaking on diabetes, a lot of, you know, homelessness. I just think about stuff like that. But my passion is, it's empowering women. So how do I step out of that? Because it still kind of lingers in there about that man saying you're too passionate. It's still there. And it shows up when I start thinking about TED Talk.
Google TEDx.
A few things. So something I forgot to mention was like, who wins when you follow the dominant narrative? So who wins when you believe, what does that even mean, too passionate, right? There's a lot of story, like, you might have made him feel uncomfortable, so he wanted you to join that, that's all about him. But in terms of actually a practical step of like, okay, this feels really big and uncomfortable, but I wanna do it. It sounds silly, but stretching. Deep hip stretches can help you learn how to like feel that intense emotion and breathe through it. That's one of the things that have significantly helped me process my emotions is stretching. Is deep stretching can be something that can be helpful in preparation of like, okay, I'm gonna do that, but I need to learn how to regulate my emotions in the process. I just said, Google, what are the requirements for TEDx? It's like, I'm just gonna look, like curiosity, playing with curiosity. I'm just gonna look and see. Like, what would that actually require? Public speaking, or very closely, like public speaking coach, what would be your topic? And start just like, what would that look like? And start curious. And once, because if you tell yourself, I don't know how to do that, you will literally turn your brain off. Like it won't bother wanting to search for the answer because you said, I don't know. It's like, what is possible? What could it look like? Then your brain will start working because it loves to be right. So give it something to be right about. So that's why we want to use our, and that's for the values too. If you're gonna be right about something and be in alignment, be right about living by your values because your brain wants to close the loop. So give it something to close on purpose.
There's at least one TED talk about how to do a TED talk. Maybe more.
Good idea, Rita. You're up. Now to do that.
Love to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I just have a question, because we've talked about, not accepting the values of our circle, not accepting the dominant values of society. Like, do you have any tips really for identifying those things that are gonna help you have a better, more healthy relationship with confidence? When you might be hearing from all sides, that we need you to go with the flow in a different way. Does that make sense? Like,
So what I'm hearing you say is like basically how you decide which narrative to follow.
yes.
Okay. You have to that's the practice of self-trust and being in touch with like, yes, this like, does that feel aligned to you? Does that feel resonant to you? Is that something that I want to hold? Those dominant narratives, like I did paint it in a negative light for the purposes of the talk, but really at the end of the day, it's like those are suggestions on how to live life. And depending on what culture you're a part of, that is the organized, agreed upon suggestion that these are our dominant narratives. They are not inherently evil or moral or good or bad. They are just suggestions of way to live your life. So you either co-sign on that narrative or you co-create the narrative that you want to follow. So you have to learn how to decide that for yourself. And that's the work. That's applying what you read from a book and applying it to your life. It's like, what does this actually look like? So that may not fully answer your question because it's connecting to like what's important to you, what do I want to live by, and what feels right to me.
I like that. Thank you. Hello. So I forget which slide it was. It was in the early beginning. It was after the ones where you pointed out literally every thought I have on a daily basis. But it said, the person you want to be on the inside is not the person
That
you are on the outside.
Yeah.
And so what if the person that you feel like you want to be on the inside is so much greater than the person that you are on the outside, that's the thing that's causing the imposter syndrome to begin with, because you think you're never going to achieve that.
The person that you desire to be feels so much greater than the person you are on the inside.
For an example,
Yeah.
I feel like I want to be like Jeff Bezos or
Okay.
someone very powerful
Okay.
like that.
Got it.
And then I'm like,
Okay.
oh, little old me, I'm just a
Got
lady, I can't do that.
So this is another complete rabbit hole, but part of my body work is also examining our obsession with extraordinary. It's humanity's obsession with extraordinary. Why must we be aiming for extraordinary, learning how to redefine what ordinary means? To me, I believe that redefining ordinary for what that means for our life is just titrating our personal excellence. So it may not be Bezos, but what's your version of personal excellence? And maybe that's a shorter gap than comparing yourself to Bezos.
One more question, anyone? Ha.
So I do some work around this topic too, the confidence and imposter syndrome. And you touched on it, the neuroplasticity, but I really reinforce that when you have all those negative messages going through your mind, you're reinforcing those neural pathways. And one way to help yourself is to reprogram the messages that you're telling yourself, because the more you repeat positive messaging, then the more you're reinforcing those neural pathways. And that's the beauty of neuroplasticity. You can rewire your brain with the right messaging. And it's not easy. I'm not saying that it's, you're going to be able to do it in a day. It's going to be a constant thing that you'll have to work on throughout your life. And it makes a big difference. So you really can reprogram the brain.
Well, thank you, doctor. And also, thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it. I wish you all a great entrepreneurial journey. Reach out to all of the great help that's available to you. If you could take a few minutes and scan the QR code and show your support. Also, let us know some feedback on what you would like to see going forward and how we can offer you some other programming. Dr. Ajit, would you please come and pick our winner for today? This one, not that one.
Mary Rubin. 1, 2, 2. Oh. Got it?
Yeah. Where's,
Oh, Tiffany has the prize, sorry.
Yeah.
yep, Tiffany. Again, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you next time. In the meantime, have a great holiday season, safe and sound. Wow.
So, I know. When I go to this coffee, it's They don't give. So I thought they were selling it there.
You know,
I go to your website, buy it from their website, they say 25%. And he doesn't make any money off of it.
Yeah, like when I was have a good holiday. All right, take care. I mean, yeah,
Don't worry about it all.
I know.
So. On to the next. So.
That's kind of a paradise, right? Yeah, a little bit small. Try not bad. Yeah. So, a lot of things to do tonight. I hope you're doing well. I don't know about that one.
Grants, money. And I'm looking at it like, oh my gosh, I feel like it's
So I'm trying to help them.
I want to. 3 people.
Okay, great. Because.